Cane Rum Bar is becoming one of the top spots here in Charleston. In this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups, I sit down with the owner, Paul Yellin. And be sure to download the free Quintin's Close-Ups app in your Apple or Google Play stores. Well, Paul, it is so good to see you.
You too.
You know, you and I actually met, I guess, a couple of months ago. And you came by Qology, and you know, you wanted me to come work for you, but I'm working somewhere else plus doing interviews, so I'm extremely busy. But I told you I would love to do an interview with you, and here we are.
Yep.
And you have a very successful story. I was just reading this on the CharlestonFoodAndWine.com website, and it says this quote: widely recognized as the rum chef, Paul Yellin was born in Brooklyn, but raised on the Caribbean island of Barbados from the time he was 2 years old, and still considers the island home. What is your definition of home when you think of the Barbados?
I mean, memories, you know, that's where I came up. That's where I learned who I am and what I'm doing. And I guess to some extent what my purpose is.
This particular article goes on to say this: a self-proclaimed, quote, rum drinker with a cooking problem, Yellin first developed a passion for cooking and began his training in the kitchen under Chef Hans Schweitzer at the Sandy Lane Hotel on the west coast of Barbados, and later at La Mure. Let me go back to rum drinker with a cooking problem. What is the problem with cooking in your mind?
Nothing. It's just a play on words.
Okay.
Right. Rather than being a chef with
Right.
a drinking problem,
Right.
I'm a drinker with a cooking problem.
Mm.
So that's it. But I would always tend to refer that people who are drinkers are not necessarily drunks. Right? People who have an appreciation for something doesn't make them an addict, you know, so to speak. So when I moved to the States, I realized a lot of people here are heavy drinkers, social. Charleston is a drinking town, right? We get that. But in the Caribbean, and not just Barbados, drinking is, yes, it's social, but we do it in an atmosphere where people still have control, right? Nobody goes overboard. A successful night is not one where you end up, you know, vomiting. You can have a good time and have enough when you stop. So it's more about really drinking, or whatever it is, enjoying quality over quantity.
I gotta go back to that rum drinker with a cooking problem.
You stuck on that?
Yeah. I got a couple of questions because I was thinking this. What is that next rum that you want to mix your next food with?
I'm always finding new rums. You know, there's hundreds and hundreds of distilleries, and there's thousands of brands of rum. Some of them not so good, you know, like anything else. There's tons of cars.
Right.
And when you talk about elite cars, there's a small bunch. And I don't ever confuse value with preference.
Okay.
Right? There are people who can afford anything they want, and they like a certain thing, you know. While I'm particularly maybe considered a rum snob, I never look down on what people are drinking. You know, I'm not to tell you what your tastes are, and it's certainly, you know, it's not a fashion show where we need to be looking at people and say, "Ha, you're drinking that." Like, you know, people have varied tastes.
Right.
Some people like sweet, some people like dry, some people like strong, some people like light. My job and my mission, I guess, is to help people find the rum that's right for them.
And the article goes on to say this: from there, he worked as a private chef for island residents, and then moved over to neighboring island, St. Lucia, to serve as the head chef of the Taikiki Village Resort.
Yes.
And throughout your career, obviously, you lived in Paris and London and Berlin and Toronto and, of course, New York. How has that changed you?
If you do it right, you pick up a little bit wherever you go. You know, you make friends, you immerse yourself in the culture. You learn, usually, and maybe not for everyone, you learn what not to do. If you learn what works, it's okay to keep experiencing things, but there's no point learning, you know, what doesn't work anymore. And I had an opportunity to see that a lot. You know, I was fortunate to learn when I was younger under some really good chefs, Hans Schweitzer,
Right.
Larry Rogers.
Right.
And when I traveled, I realized people did things differently, and that's okay. But I also know that right is right and wrong is wrong. There are basic hygiene practices that should be standard anywhere in the world. So, you know, washing your hands,
Right.
that's the same no matter what country you're in. And taking shortcuts, that's the same wherever you go. So when you're dealing with food at any level, if you're selling hot dogs or you're making caviar bellinis with gold flakes on it, right? You need to be very careful about how you're dealing with people's food, your own personal hygiene, and never try to cheat people. You know, I was taught value for money and pride in work. So again, it doesn't matter that I'm not selling $100 plates of food. Everything I put out is of quality. So if you start right, you're going to end right. If you start wrong, you're going to end wrong.
And then, obviously, you have a very long list of accomplishments here. You had the opportunity to cook for high-profile figures such as former British Prime Minister Tony Blair, obviously Barack Obama, the former President of the United States, at his pre-inauguration gala at DC's Union Station.
Wait, Barack Obama's not the president anymore?
Yeah, well.
We'll leave that one.
But, oh gosh, what was your favorite cooking event and why?
Very hard to narrow it down to one. I'm
Okay.
sorry, I can't. My favorite thing to do is to go home and cook for my wife and kids. That's it. When I can do that, because I work
Yeah.
6 days a week,
Right.
80 hours a week. When I do that, it's great. But if not, I wake up early and I cook something for them, either in the crock pot or I bake something. But my favorite meal now is to cook for my family. To pick one from, you know, my past, it would be hard. It would really be hard because each one has a memory and a distinct. I love catering because it gives you opportunity to, you know, do different things, different locations, think on your feet. When people see events and when they come off without a hitch and everything goes great and the guests are happy and the, you know, people really have no idea of what happens behind the scenes. Right? And the whole point is, as people in the hospitality industry, and you would know that because you're out front, you know, you really are on the front lines, bringing people in and meeting people and greeting people. Their expectation is that they're going to be attended to, right, and that they're going to be happy and satisfied and happy to spend the money that they're spending. You know, whether it's just acknowledgement or the service. What we want to do is to make people believe that everything's all right. The kitchen could be on fire. Yeah, 2 cooks burnt themselves. Oh, that's fine. When you go out front, you're smiling and everything is fine.
That's true.
And that's all it is. So catering gives you an opportunity to produce restaurant quality food in locations that, you know, don't seem capable to do it. So Union Station, there's 1,200 people. We set up a kitchen, you know, behind curtains, and you're still producing restaurant quality food. So I do like that. You know, sorry to drag on like that. I cannot pinpoint any one event that stands out that I would say is my favorite. I've learned something from all of them.
And what's that?
Keep going. You know, never compromise. Regardless of what happens, you keep going. You keep putting out the food. You roll with whatever punch happens. If the gas goes out, you use electricity. If electricity goes out, you get solar reflectors, but you keep going.
What is the state of hospitality and the restaurant business in your mind right now?
Very scary. Very scary, and for one particular reason I would say is that in the last 10 years I have seen Food Network and TV shows like that, cooking shows and reality TV create some sort of image in people's minds that they can put on a jacket and call themselves a chef. A larger problem to some extent is the quality of front of house staff that not only I have to deal with, but everyone I speak to is in the same situation. I don't want to use the term millennials, but we have younger people who are in the industry and have almost no pride in it. They're only in it for the money. Everything seems to be catered to them. Entitled is one of those words that gets thrown around a lot, but you have people who don't show up to work, don't call, right? And not just in the restaurant industry, but an entire generation of people who can only seem to communicate through text messaging and don't understand the respect of showing up to work or picking up the phone and speaking to someone, right? We rely on our staff. You know, a restaurant, any kind of business relies on the people that represents them. So when they don't show up, we're left, you know, in a situation. So if you're supposed to be at work at 9 o'clock and you text me at 9:15 to say you're late, no, you already late. Yeah. And in that situation, the respectful thing to do is to call someone and explain yourself. But don't send me a text. There's nothing I can do with a text. And what I have to say to you, I'm not sending over a text. So, Charleston, for example, I moved here 6 years ago, and literally at the time when it was King Street was just building out, the restaurant scene has exploded. Exploded. You know, when I could look at 5 different spots on King Street, you know, the rents were kind of high then. Now they're unattainable for people who don't have hedge fund backing. Yeah, we have restaurant groups and famous chefs coming from all over to open places. We're opening 12 a month and closing 4, right? Because it's still, regardless of the tourist situation, it's still a community, a small town community of people, and we only have a limited amount of choices, right? So it's very hard to sustain a business when people are just opening. Again, back to staffing, all of these restaurants are fighting over the same staff because they're not paying. Right? The rate of pay in South Carolina is not the rate of pay in New York or Los Angeles. What they pay cooks here, pay dishwashers in New York. Yeah. So there's not a lot of chefs or waiters or bartenders of talent, of caliber, who are willing to move here to be paid less. Now there are interns, there are commie chefs, students who will come to work with some of our James Beard Award winning chefs, Sean Brock and Mike Latta, right? And they come here to work for them, to put it on their resume, to get some experience, and they work for free. They come down. So it's very hard for other people, small businesses like myself, to compete with people who get staff for free. Yeah, I can't afford. You know, nobody's gonna come to work for me for free, and I can't afford, obviously, to pay, you know, more than what I can pay. But I try my best to pay a living wage and keep it going. It's important to me because I was once that common chef, you know, and I have rent to pay as well. Right? So it was a few years ago, obviously, but things change, and yet they don't change. You know, restaurant industry will always be the restaurant industry, and it's a hard life. I think going back to the TV shows, people watch these shows and they get this false impression of what the restaurant industry is. It's not over at 10 o'clock. It's over when it's finished. Yeah, at 11:45. Sorry, if you close at 12, you know at 11:45 people are going to walk in the door,
Yes.
right? It happens all the time. And I find instead of people being, hey, let's do this.
Right.
All right, customers, right? They're like grumbling and mumbling. Oh man, I gotta go home. I'm meeting my girlfriend. You know, this is how we make money. This is what hospitality is that regardless of how you feel, you put on that smile and you welcome those people, because that is how I pay bills. Right? So you going home early and you needing to be somewhere else is not my concern. It's not my problem. So for the most part, I've been in business for a little bit less than a year, and I've gone through quite a number of stuff, because while you can overlook some things, I will not overlook that. If you don't understand the premise of what hospitality is, you're in the wrong business. So I don't really have time to suffer fools, and I won't employ people or keep people around who don't understand how to represent, me, my brand, or themselves in general, because you are only as good as your last job, your last recommendation. And I'll give people one warning. It's not baseball, it's not 3 strikes, you're out, nothing. One warning. That's it. Right? The bank doesn't give me any warning. If I'm late fees. If I miss payments, foreclose. Right? So I need to make my payments every month. I pay my bills, I pay my staff as best I can, but I won't tolerate laziness, and I won't tolerate excuses. And my wife thinks sometimes I'm a little bit harsh, but you don't have time to play around. It's reality, right? Because in the real world, the big bad world out there, you get eaten up. If you're not ready, you'll get eaten up. So I'm not their parents. It's not my job to teach them lessons and life skills and all of that. If you can pick it up along the way, great. But I don't have time to be teaching, 20-year-old kids respect and honor and commitment and perseverance. If you want to learn something, stay later. Come early, stay a bit later. But if you look at 10 o'clock, you clock out, you've gone, then I'll pay you and treat you like an hourly employee and give you no more than that. I can't give you any more than you give me.
Write the headline for me. The Rum Chef will do what next?
We'll do what next? I'm still doing this. I don't know. I mean, we're 11 months in.
Oh, yes.
August will be 1 year that we're doing it, and I really feel that we're just breaking our stride now. I opened a rum bar in a bourbon town, which is quite funny because this was traditionally, historically, and originally a rum town. Most of the people here tend to forget that Charleston is a colony of a colony. Right? The boat that came here to Charleston Landing in 1670 came from Barbados. This was an English colony. This wasn't America immediately. It was an English colony, and as an English colony, this was a rum drinking town. It was one of the most important ports in the New World. Jamaica, Barbados, and Charleston were the 3 largest, most powerful, and wealthiest ports in the New World. Crown jewels in the English crown. And up until the 1700s, there were rum houses and punch houses and ports. This whole area in front of here was all ports and seamen and sailors who came from all over the world, bringing culture, bringing foods, bringing travelers, bringing experiences. So we went from a very, very metropolitan town to a little bit more of a closed society at some point. But originally it was called the Holy City. It was very tolerant of other religions, the Huguenots and Jews and Christians and all sorts of different languages came here, and people understood they had to make it together. You may have differences, but you have to make it together. I'm not trying to get political, but I think recently we have lost that plot again. People tend to be very centered on what it is. This particular building, which is from the 1830s, was at one point, a very, very popular and very well-known bar called Big John's Tavern. And I still have people who come and mumble, grumble, and shake their fist at me for daring to take away something from their memory or their childhood. And sometimes not in a nice way. Let me know that I'm not from here, and that I'm an outsider, and I own a home, I pay taxes, my children are in school here, one of my sons was born at MUSC. I consider this home. I live here. My wife is a physician at Roper. Right? We have chosen to move here when we can go anywhere we want. and I want this to be home. You know, I have a business here, so it's very upsetting when somebody says to me that, regardless of what I do, I'm an outsider. It makes me feel not welcome. On the other hand, there's a lot of people, a lot more people who are happy with what I did than unhappy, who came in and said, yes, this was Big John's, but I love what you've done with the place. And oh, what a great idea, a rum bar. I always wondered when that was going to come. You know, I love rum. So, you know, you have to deal with that, good and bad. And I just wish that more people could be open-minded about what it is, because the truth is a lot of people are ignorant. And I say that respectfully, not that they're stupid, they just don't know. And they don't know that they don't know. Does that make any sense?
It does.
Yeah. So what people think rum is or was, I'm hoping to disprove by doing this. So what am I doing next? This. For the next 3 to 5 years, this is what I'm doing.
That's so good to hear. Well, Paul Yellin, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate this.
It's good to meet you.
Likewise. Thank you.